I love what Catherine mentioned this morning in the circle about lineage. And we really do have intentional creativity because of my mom, Caron McCloud, who's going to read us a poem, and Sue Hoya Sellers, and her mentor before her, and really my two grandmothers who also nurtured this. And it is a lineage. And I feel like so often we feel separated off if we're not a part of our indigenous culture or tribe at this time. That's part of what Cosmic Cowgirls is a tribe that's based in the two sides of the feminine, the wild and irreverent self, and then the sacred, holy inner self, those two coming together. And this lineage, like I mentioned before, goes back to Lenore Thomas Strauss. I'm going to put these books out. These are two of Lenore's books. They're almost no more available because our whole community purchased them all. Any ones that were remaining. But I wanted to read you this one thing because it's connected to this sense of the muse. And also, she wasn't on Wikipedia 2 years ago, and she's on there now. Which is awesome because that is our lineage, and we're working to get intentional creativity onto that page in a way to show what the museum calls enduring influence, which is us. And her work is at a museum, and one painting of mine and one painting of Sue's showing, and it's this. So there's an image of her standing by this stone. The stone is more solid than she is, and it says, "Slowly I move around the rock, touching its cool surface, fingers asking, touching the hardness, the tiny flecks of mica and the skin of grimy dust, feeling tentatively what may be within, unwhispered. Then, quietly, I bow to this stone." That's it. That's what we're doing. That's what you're doing. So I'll put these out. Please make sure you have clean hands and take some time just to feel and connect with the image and the word that's present, and that you get to claim this lineage if you choose. And we have our own rituals and our own traditions that are not culturally appropriated from others because we have made them up through practice, and we'll be revealing more of those as time goes on. But even just the rose petals in the water, that's part of our traditions. There are many more that are coming. Silently bowing to the stone, how we treat the painting and the creative process, that's all a part of, we get to say, this is what we do in our tradition. These are sacred things that we get to do. And you haven't taken it from anyone because you're making it. You are the tribe. You're making it possible. You're no longer disconnected, and the lineage is huge. And Lenore carved these things into stone that stand. You're a part of that, and it's no mistake that you're here. And I think, Creator, that my mother and Sue connected because I feel like somehow my life has become an offering to this work, this community. As a personal individual artist, I would have done a lot of other things and did for a long time. But as soon as I started doing this, then my mom and Sue both started working and teaching almost full time, both of them, as a part of this, and have had the privilege of studying with them all this time. And it's real, and you get to be a part of it. You don't have to be separated anymore. And you get to share my mommy, Caron McCloud. Maybe right here. I don't know what it is yet, but you've got something I want, and I'm not going away until I get it. Shiloh was born.
such a part in who she is. If I could send you home with one thing, and I got to choose what that one thing is, it would be to send you home with a sense and experience of your own beauty. I'm not going to be able to talk through this without crying, because I am so deeply moved by the fact that we are created in the image of the Creator. And the Creator must be beautiful, because look at her creation. And so many of us don't have a sense of that. I came from the wrong side of the tracks. I was very pigeon-toed, knock-kneed, skinny. I had bad feet, so I had to wear what I call boys' shoes. Back in my days, they didn't have cute girls' shoes. I think there was some Mary Janes out there somewhere, but we didn't have these kinds of shoes, And then I had these little boys' shoes, so my feet were all messed up, but I didn't know that I wasn't beautiful, and I didn't know that I was from the wrong side of the tracks until I went to school and slowly learned that you had to dress a certain way, be a certain way, be of a certain class, run with a certain group in order to be considered anything, really. And I realized that there were classes and there were differences between us, and felt very left out. And so I wanted to be beautiful. And so I started focusing on beauty, and I would really watch people and women who were considered beautiful, and I focus on the way they came into a room, the way they carried themselves, the way they operated in the world, and I started practicing that. And in the EST training, Warner had a thing where he'd say, you put 200 people in a room and just you don't even need any structure. Just say, walk around and stand in front of each other and look into each other's eyes. And he says, if you can do that without falling in love, if you can do that without seeing the beauty in that person, he says, maybe when you first looked at them, their features aren't arranged like the ones on TV or something, or some previous idea that we've had about what the 10 is. But he says, if you can stand in front of someone for just a couple of minutes and really look into their eyes and tell me they're not beautiful, there's something really wrong with you. And it was so true. We'd just circulate through the room and stop in front of me and look at it. And we were all in tears. It's just like we saw the beauty. So I'm asking you to claim that, to have a sense of that. It's in the Kabbalah teaching of the tree of life, when we line up the 10 Sephiroth with our bodies. Beauty is this area. It's the torso. And it's also, it is called Tiferet. And it's the place of beauty, and it's the place of the manifested, crucified, resurrected God, which means that this is where we enter, and we have our experience of that self-sacrifice that we so often address, and now we're this resurrected new being. And so part of that resurrection to me is to claim the beauty that we are, and to look at each other and to see each other's beauty, and to take responsibility for that. Because I have a friend who we were talking about beauty or something, and I was telling her, it's like, well, you know how blah, 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 beauty. And she says, I've never considered myself as beautiful. And it blew me away, because I consider her very beautiful. And it was like, it completely threw me off. It was like, if you're not beautiful, then I'm not either. And something's really screwy here. It's like, I don't know what beauty is if you're not beauty, because I see beauty when I look at you. And the fact that she had no experience of that. And there's some truly beautiful women that I know that have no experience of it, because nobody tells them. They didn't get invited to go to the prom with the boy that they wanted to, because the boy thought, of course, she already had a date, So the beautiful ones are also isolated, because they don't, oh, well, she doesn't want to be friends with me, or, So I'm just saying that we have all of these ideas about it. And you're painting these beautiful canvases. These are all reflections of you. You're creating beauty in the world. You're going to be in these classrooms where you're going to make people aware of beauty in a way that they've never been before. And you're going to be beautiful. And I want you to really claim that, like we lay claim to our language in these words. Lay claim. One of the things that we do in the Kabbalah is that whichever of the Sephirot we're working in, like when we're working in beauty, we get up in the morning and we face that face in the mirror and we say, I see your beauty. I will move in beauty. I will claim beauty, and I will share that beauty. And a lot of this I've just learned since being in Color of Women, because the women that come here, just being an experience with them is just, you all know what I'm talking about because you've already seen each other's beauty. I can see it on your faces. You know, you're all reflecting each other's beauty. So this came about as a result of this particular muse showed up. And also one of the reasons I'm reading it is to say that a real person can become your muse. And you may never see that person again in real life, but you'll keep her with you and she will inspire you. And you will think about her when you look in the mirror. So it's called, and it's actually, I told you I couldn't say anything in less than 4 pages. So that's an idea. And Mary's the one who started calling this a poem. This is her favorite poem. I was like, it's actually prose, but it does have poetry. So it's Muse Lily White reconciles paradox. And the opening, I never remember the epigram. While loss and sorrow get all the credit for character building and growth, we have become too familiar with and accustomed to their company. It is beauty who awakens, humbles, and requires us to grow if we are to tolerate the glory of her presence. We are so used to our sorrow. We are so used to, that we just can't seem, it just becomes, we kind of walk in our grief. We walk in our criticisms. And it's almost comfortable. It's like some of us are so busy that if we have a few minutes where we can just sit down and have a cup of something or look out the window, we think, I must be missing something. There's something I should have done. Phone call, something I didn't get done, or I wouldn't be having this time. And beauty is like that. To be in her presence requires a certain heart for it, because we don't want to stare, for one thing. Well, I do. I just want to stare right at you and get every bit that I can. And it is humbling. And so watch for her, like you watch for your muse. It's like, watch for her. You're going to see your muse in each person that you actually look into their eyes. She's going to become a part of that muse. We had just made our selections from the exotic East Indian menu and placed our order with the great waitress when the woman walked in. The late afternoon sunlight suddenly flooding the dining room through windows framed in persimmon walls and shining on dark-grained, highly polished wood tables and cozy pillowed booths provided the perfect setting or stage for her entrance. She appeared as though stepping from an impressionist painting, but as one having passed through gathering the best qualities from several eras. Let's start with the wide-brimmed, fine straw hat shading the porcelain skin and delicate bone structure that once epitomized the criteria for beautiful women of the aristocracies of a once elegant race that ruled the world, now being superseded by a different ideal. Her slender body was accentuated by a straight tunic-cut shirt of white linen, the only fabric I can think of as successfully reconciling paradox by being both crisp and soft at the same time. The hand-rolled hem arrived right on schedule at its fingertip length destination, where her hip curve turns the curve to become the terrain of thigh. From here, pale blue pinstripe seersucker capri pants traveled the leg to arrive fashionably early, just before calf becomes ankle. The silence of her thin strapped sandals, exemplifying the maxim, the less shoe the better, as the host accompanied her across the room, seemed to induce a meditation. Upon removing her hat as she was seated at her table by a window, the sunlight rushed with every intention to catch itself in her hair, but in coming near stopped short at the sight of the sacred being and settled for hovering over the white hair that streamed below her waist. Yes, white. Did I fail to mention that she was old? No one really ever knows how old these creatures are, but it turns out often enough that since they are always older than they look, I was justified in the assumption that she might have rivaled my own 3/4 of a century on this planet. I was grateful for the distraction, lest my staring embarrassed her or myself when, preceded by the pungent scent of curry and fig, the food arrived, perfectly prepared and presented. My daughter Shiloh and I ceased staring at this luminescent being and, nodding at each other in affirmation of the pleasure of her presence, began to dine. We were celebrating the success of the first 4-day session of the Color of Woman seminar, which Shiloh had created. We spoke of our delight and amazement regarding the quality of the women participants and that of the paintings they were producing and the breakthroughs they were experiencing. During our delicious meal and conversation, our eyes would travel back to capture the detail of the woman, watched as food and wine were gracefully brought to her mouth with the slender hands which time had finally convinced to reveal some definition to the intricate miracle of bone and vein. We watched this one who dined alone. Alone, that is, except for the perfect composure which accompanies those few who occasionally dine alone because they choose to do so. Those few who are accustomed to and at home in this being gazed upon by others. I knew I was being permanently imprinted by this woman, as I thought back on another such being I'd witnessed in Hong Kong 30-some years ago, while dining with friends at Hugo's, considered at that time one of the finest restaurants in the world, and certainly one of the most romantic. Here had arrived one of those solitary beauties that silences a room upon entry with their elegance and style, and I choose to dine alone, composure. I choose to order wine, she seemed to state, that meets with my refined aesthetic, from the waiter who hovers over me and lights my cigarette. I choose to take this red rose with my impeccably manicured long fingers from the crystal vase between the white candles on my white tablecloth, and after consuming its fragrance, place it exactly where it belongs in my dark, upswept hair. And I choose to indulge myself for several hours with these exquisite courses, and then, smoking contentedly, sit in contemplation of the mystery of myself over brandy. She has been my Belrose muse ever since. I arose while my daughter paid for our meal and went to pay homage to my new muse, hoping that, besides interrupting her dinner, I would not do something stupid like trip and bump her table or spill sudden tears into her soup. Up close, face raised and open to me like a lily in full bloom, I knew why the sun had halted its rush to touch her and was satisfied with only hovering. I wanted to tell her all these things that I am telling you now, but her soup would have gotten cold and her salad would have wilted. Besides, I could bring speech to nothing more original than, I apologize for intruding, and I know that you hear this all the time. But I can't leave without saying, you are so beautiful. She reached out to take me with both hands, and we clasped each other's arms, just where the forearms narrowed to become the wrists, and with her pale blue eyes shining their light on me. And again, reconciling paradox by speaking in a voice tuned by both dignity and warmth, she said, "From one beautiful woman to another, thank you. You have made my day." Since then, I have missed no opportunity to tell this story of my encounter with Muse Lily White, and I have yet to tell it without tears. Even though we know that beauty brings us to our knees to worship at her shrine, and those who choose to serve her have learned that she is the most strict and demanding mistress of all, some may wonder, why tears? Coming into the presence of Lily White happened, as already noted, just after 4 incredible days of being in the Color of Woman seminar. I was with almost 24 beautiful women, assisting in and supporting their progress to access and experience language and images of themselves and or their muses through poetry and painting. We had spoken much of whether muses come from inside of us, from outside of us, or both. We had spoken much of beauty. We had watched these women move into relationships with their pages and with their canvases, and with the commitment and courage and grace of dancers, of warriors, of priests. Watch them move between inspiration and despair as they struggled with stubby phrases and stubborn sentences, unyielding strokes and unwieldy brushes, and most of all, with a silent, unrelenting, ancient rage of self-criticism and doubt. We'd watch them through their diligence, open hearts, and ability to receive instruction regarding the least thing. Maybe the suggestion of a line break, or how attending to less than 1/4 of an inch of a line or page of canvas can change everything. How the sweep of a bold and single stroke, or the placement of a tiny dot of paint in an eye, can light an entire canvas. We watched and we saw when they would suddenly dance back from their work to witness what had been destined to materialize from the time they were born. To look upon her at last and to exclaim, "Oh my God, I love her. She is beautiful." And in seeing their own beauty, gazing back at them, they saw the beauty in everyone. And they fell in love with themselves. And they fell in love with each other. Everyone, including me. Many came to tell me that I am beautiful and how they hope to look as good as I do when they reach my age. But it wasn't until Lily White reached out to me in her response that I really finally got it. And I was humbled. I realized how shallow my responses to the compliments lavished upon me had been. I had behaved demurely, saying things like, "Oh, thank you, honey. This is so sweet of you to say that." While thinking things like, "Oh, they're just saying that because I saw them through hard places in their process." Or because they are being gracious and kind to an old woman, but mostly because I'm Shillow's mother. Worse yet, I had not received or validated their perceptions. So why the tears? Perhaps because I had to be reminded that all our striving to find our way in this reality that exists in a paradigm of paradox can only be received and reconciled by beauty. After all these years and all these compliments, I had not recognized the false pride that prevented my receiving until I was humbled before Lily White and witnessed her not only receive my compliment, but upgrade it to the knowledge of acknowledgement. Not only did she receive this acknowledgement from me, but she validated it by claiming and owning and standing for the truth of it. The truth that she is beautiful. And speaking to me from that stance, saying, from one beautiful woman to another, thank you. You have made my day. So again, beauty, that relentless mistress whom I serve, brings me to my knees with the revelation of her precious sister, Grace, whom she will not expose to those who cannot receive and are unwilling to stand for our own value. So now, besides serving beauty, I will honor her sister Grace with this writing of this thank you from one beautiful woman to all you beautiful women who will receive the truth of your own beauty and stand for your own gifts.